Dr. Kethavar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he stared at the datapad in his blue-scaled hands. The readings made no sense. Nothing in his 20 years of xenobiology had prepared him for what he was seeing. The creatures before him looked harmless enough, standing barely 2 meters tall with pale pink skin and strange fur only on top of their heads. But the scanner readings told a different story. "Impossible," he whispered in his native Zephyrian tongue, then switched to Galactic Standard. "These readings cannot be correct." The lead creature stepped forward with what appeared to be a friendly gesture. It exposed its white bone structures in what Kethavar's cultural database identified as a smile. Though why any species would display their teeth as a sign of peace remained a mystery. "Hello there," the creature said in surprisingly clear Galactic Standard. "I'm Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth Vessel Pioneer. We come in peace." Kethavar's assistant, a young crystalline named Velnix, made a sound like breaking glass, the equivalent of a gasp. The scanner in her hands was beeping frantically. "Doctor, the radiation readings are off the charts. These beings are walking nuclear reactors." Jake Morrison tilted his head, which Kethavar noted seemed to be a common gesture among his species. "Radiation? Oh, you mean from the sun exposure? Yeah, we spent some time on the surface of Kepler 442b yesterday. Beautiful sunrise there. Nothing, like a little vitamin D to start the day." The two scientists exchanged glances. Kepler 442b was a death world with radiation levels that would kill most known species within minutes. Yet this human spoke of watching the sunrise there as if it were a pleasant morning stroll. "You were on the surface?" Kethavar managed to ask. "Without protective gear." "Well, we had our regular clothes on," Jake replied, gesturing to his simple, blue uniform. "Though Lisa here got a bit sunburned." He pointed to a female human whose skin showed a slight reddish tint. "She's always forgetting her sunscreen." Lisa Grant stepped forward with the same tooth-bearing expression. "Nice to meet you both. Sorry about the radiation thing. We probably should have warned you. Humans can handle quite a bit of solar radiation. It's actually good for us in small doses." Velnix's crystalline body was now glowing a nervous purple. "Good for you?" The readings show levels that would cause immediate cellular breakdown in any known species. "Really?" Paul Carter, the human engineer, looked genuinely interested. "That's fascinating. I guess we're just built differently. Hey, did you know that back on Earth some humans actually seek out radiation exposure? We have these things called tanning beds that artificially create the same kind of radiation. People pay money to lie under them." Kethavar felt his secondary heart skip a beat. These beings voluntarily exposed themselves to deadly radiation for what they called cosmetic purposes. He made a note to update the initial contact protocols immediately. "Perhaps we should move to a more controlled environment," Kethavar suggested, gesturing toward the research station's main laboratory. "We have much to discuss." As the group moved through the station's corridors, Kethavar noticed more disturbing details about the humans. They moved with a predatory grace that reminded him of the apex hunters from his homeworld. Their eyes tracked movement constantly, and they seemed to catalog every detail of their surroundings. Most unsettling of all, they appeared completely relaxed despite being surrounded by unknown alien technology and beings who could easily overpower them. "This is quite a place you have here," Amy Rodriguez, the human medic, commented as they passed a containment unit holding several specimens of aggressive flora from the Death World Terminus 7th. "Those plants look nasty. What do they do?" "They produce a toxin that causes paralysis and eventual death in most carbon-based life forms," Velnix explained, still maintaining a safe distance from the humans. Amy nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds similar to some plants we have on Earth. We call them poison ivy, oleander, castor beans. Though I guess yours are probably more potent." "More potent?" Kethavar stopped walking. "These plants can kill a full-grown Thurian in less than 10 minutes. "Oh, wow," Amy said with what seemed like genuine interest rather than fear. "That is pretty serious. On Earth it usually takes longer than that unless you really eat a lot of the stuff. Though I did have a patient once who developed immunity to poison ivy after repeated exposure. The human immune system is pretty adaptable." Kethavar's scanner was now emitting a steady stream of concerning data. The humans' casual discussion of toxins and immunity was bad enough, but the medical readings were becoming more alarming by the minute. These beings had redundant circulatory systems, skeletal structures that appeared designed for both flexibility and incredible strength, and muscle density that defied conventional biology. In the laboratory, Kethvar gestured for the humans to take seats on the examination platforms. "If you don't mind, we would like to run some basic scans. Nothing invasive, just standard biological surveys." "Sure thing," Jake said, hopping onto the platform with surprising agility. "Though I should mention, we might register a bit differently than other species. Humans tend to have some unique biological quirks." As the scanners activated, Kethvar watched the readings with growing horror. The human's body temperature was fluctuating in response to environmental changes. His heart rate was variable, speeding up and slowing down in patterns that suggested incredible cardiovascular control. Most disturbing of all, his brain showed activity in regions that corresponded to tactical analysis and threat assessment. "Fascinating," Paul said, looking at the display screens. "Is that my brain activity? Look at those patterns. I was just thinking about how this scanner works and wondering about the power requirements for a station this size." Velnix made another glass-breaking sound. "You were analyzing our technology?" "Not analyzing exactly," Paul replied with that unsettling tooth display. "More like professional curiosity. I'm an engineer, so I tend to notice how things work. This is really impressive stuff. The energy efficiency alone must be incredible to maintain a station this far from any star." Kethvar realized that while they had been studying the humans had been studying them. These beings possessed an almost instinctive understanding of technology, tactical awareness that operated below conscious thought, and biological systems that seemed designed for survival in impossible conditions. Lisa had moved to examine a display showing various galactic languages. "This is beautiful work," she said. "The linguistic patterns here suggest a common root language that diverged about 12,000 years ago. Are these all from the same sector?" "How could you possibly determine that from a brief glance?" Kethvar asked, his voice betraying his growing unease. "Pattern recognition," Lisa replied simply. "Humans are pretty good at seeing connections and analyzing data quickly. It's just how our brains work." As the examination continued, each new revelation about human capabilities added to Kethvar's concern. They could process information at incredible speeds, adapt to new environments almost instantly, and seem to possess an innate understanding of technology and tactics that took other species years to develop. When Amy casually mentioned that humans could function effectively on as little as 4 hours of sleep for weeks at a time, or that their bodies could continue operating even with significant injuries, Kethvar made his decision. This information needed to reach the Galactic Council immediately. These humans were either the most dangerous species ever encountered, or they were something else entirely. Either way, the galaxy needed to know about them before it was too late. As the humans prepared to leave for their guest quarters, Jake turned back with another one of those disturbing smiles. "Thank you for the warm welcome, Doctor. We're looking forward to learning more about the galactic community. It's going to be quite an adventure." Watching them walk away, Kethvar couldn't shake the feeling that the adventure was just beginning and that the galaxy might never be the same again. The emergency session of the Galactic Council's Xenobiology Committee convened 3 days after Dr. Kethvar's initial report. Representatives from 12 different species sat around the circular chamber, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and harmonic tones that the universal translators worked overtime to process. Zizakth, the hive mind representative, spoke first through the cluster of insectoid drones that served as his voice. "The data presented by Dr. Kethvar requires immediate investigation. We cannot allow an unknown species with such capabilities to remain unexamined." The crystalline resonance speaker Veltar's body chimed in agreement. "The readings suggest biological engineering far beyond anything in our records. These humans may represent a threat to galactic stability." Commander Jake Morrison and his team had been given comfortable quarters on Harmony Point Station, unaware that their every movement was being monitored by sensors designed to study the most dangerous life forms in the galaxy. The council had assigned a full research team to observe them, led by Zakth and Veltar. Dr. Helen Barnes, the human mission's chief medical officer, had volunteered to cooperate with the alien scientists. She sat in the medical bay as Veltar's. Crystalline appendages hovered over various scanning devices, each one revealing new impossibilities about human biology. "Your skeletal structure makes no sense," Veltar chimed, the sound translated into words by the station systems. "It appears designed for both flexibility and incredible impact resistance. No natural evolution would produce such redundancy." Helen smiled, a gesture that still made several of the alien researchers step back involuntarily. "Well, humans do tend to be pretty sturdy. We evolved on a world with higher gravity than most, and we've always been pretty active. Running, jumping, climbing, fighting. Our bones had to keep up." "Fighting?" Dr. Kethvar looked up from his datapad. "You evolved for combat purposes?" "Not exactly," Helen replied, seemingly unaware of how her words affected the listening scientists. "More like we never really stopped fighting. Predators, environment, each other. Earth isn't what you'd call a gentle world. We had to be tough to survive." Marine Sergeant Ryan Cooper had volunteered for the more intensive physical examinations. He lay on the scanning table as alien instruments probed his body's responses to various stimuli. The readings were making the research team increasingly nervous. His muscle density is 30% higher than should be possible for a bipedal creature of his size. Zakth's drones buzzed in their synthesized voice. "And watch this." The hive mind activated a pain simulator designed to test species' tolerance levels. Ryan's body tensed slightly, but he remained conscious and alert, even as the readings showed pain levels that would incapacitate most known species. "That's pretty uncomfortable," he said calmly. "Reminds me of basic training, though not as bad as that time I got shot in the leg during the Mars colony uprising." The room fell silent. Several researchers made notes about the humans, casual mention of surviving projectile wounds and participating in armed conflicts. "You were shot?" Dr. Kethvar's voice carried a tremor that his translator couldn't quite hide. "And you survived?" "Sure," Ryan said, pulling up his pant leg to show a small scar. "Took a few weeks to heal completely, but the medics fixed me. Pretty good. Humans are tough to kill. We don't go down easy." Lisa Grant had been assigned to work with the linguistics department, where her rapid analysis of alien languages was causing its own set of concerns. She sat with Dr. Thisera, a serpentine scholar known throughout the galaxy for her expertise in xenolinguistics. "How are you processing these language patterns so quickly?" Thisera asked, her forked tongue tasting the air nervously.
"It takes our best students years to achieve basic fluency in a single alien tongue." Lisa looked up from the datapad displaying 17 different language samples. "Pattern recognition, mostly. Human brains are really good at finding connections."
"Plus, we grew up with thousands of languages on Earth. Once you understand the basic principles, it's just a matter of identifying the patterns." "Thousands?" Thisera's scales rippled in distress. "Your species developed thousands of separate communication systems?" "Oh, sure," Lisa replied cheerfully. "And that's just the major ones. We have regional dialects, technical jargons, cultural variations. Humans love to communicate. We'll create new languages just for fun. We have entire languages that exist only in written form, or ones we invented for entertainment purposes." The implications were staggering. A species with such advanced communication capabilities combined with their apparent biological advantages suggested a level of social organization that could pose significant challenges to existing galactic power structures. Paul Carter was in the engineering section, where his casual examination of station systems was making the technical staff extremely uncomfortable. Chief Engineer Vorthak, a massive Thurian with 4 arms, watched as Paul identified potential improvements to their reactor design within minutes of looking at the schematics. "Your containment field could be 20% more efficient if you adjusted the harmonic frequency here," Paul said, pointing to a section of the display. "And this cooling system has some redundancies that are actually working against each other." Vorthak's beetle-like carapace clicked nervously. "You understand our technology?" "The basics, yeah," Paul replied. I mean, the principles are the same. Everywhere. Energy, matter, efficiency. You guys have some really elegant solutions I haven't seen before, but the fundamental physics are universal. What disturbed Vorthak most was that Paul wasn't just analyzing the technology, he was improving it. His suggestions showed an intuitive understanding of engineering principles that suggested his species had been designed for technological advancement. Amy Rodriguez was in the medical wing, where her discussions with alien doctors were revealing the most disturbing information yet. Dr. Kelthran, a healer prime from the peaceful ethereal collective, was documenting human medical capabilities with growing alarm. You're telling me that your species can survive the loss of entire organs? Kelthran's melodic voice carried harmonics of distress. Well, some of them, Amy explained patiently. We have 2 kidneys, but we can live with 1. Same with lungs. The liver can regenerate from partial damage. The brain has backup systems for most functions. It's not ideal, but humans can keep going with pretty significant injuries. And your immune system? Amy's explanation of how human immune systems could adapt to new threats, develop resistances to toxins, and even sometimes overcure diseases, through sheer aggressive response left Kelthran speechless. The concept of an immune system that could become stronger through exposure to pathogens violated everything the peaceful species understood about biology. We also have this thing called adrenaline, Amy continued. When humans are threatened or excited, our bodies dump chemicals that make us stronger, faster, and less sensitive to pain. We can lift cars, run impossible distances, fight through injuries that should disable us. You become stronger when threatened? Kelthran's harmonics were now almost discordant with fear. Sure, Amy replied. It's called fight or flight response. Though humans tend to choose fight more often than flight, we're kind of stubborn that way. The research team reconvened after a week of intensive study. The data they had collected painted a picture that chilled representatives from across the galaxy. The humans appeared to be the perfect biological weapon, intelligent, adaptable, incredibly durable, and apparently designed for both individual survival and collective action. Look at the evidence. Zizakth's drones buzzed as data flowed across the main display. Redundant organ systems. Skeleton designed for impact resistance. Muscle structure optimized for explosive power. Nervous system that enhances performance under stress. Veltar added her own analysis. Their cognitive abilities suggest advanced pattern recognition, tactical thinking, and rapid technological adaptation. They process languages faster than our best scholars and understand complex engineering within minutes. Dr. Kethvar presented the final piece of evidence that would change everything. I've analyzed their genetic structure. The complexity is beyond anything we've seen in natural evolution. Too many beneficial mutations, too many backup systems, too many advantages with no apparent evolutionary pressure to develop them. The conclusion was inescapable. Humans were not a naturally evolved species. Someone had designed them, engineered them for maximum survivability and effectiveness. The question was who and why they had appeared now, just as tensions between the major galactic powers were reaching dangerous levels. The research team's report would soon reach the full Galactic Council, along with a recommendation that would terrify civilizations across the galaxy. Humanity needed to be contained, studied, and possibly eliminated before their creators revealed their true purpose. Jake Morrison and his team continued their friendly diplomatic exchanges, unaware that they had just been classified as the greatest potential threat in recorded galactic history. The Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such tension. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive chamber, their various forms creating a sea of scales, fur, chitin, and crystalline structures. The air hummed with nervous energy as translators worked overtime to process the dozens of different communication methods. High Counselor Thisser, of the Serpentine Collective, rose from her coiled position, her golden scales catching the chamber's artificial lighting. Her forked tongue tasted the air as she spoke, each word carrying the weight of ancient authority. Fellow beings of the galaxy, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. We face a threat unlike any in recorded history, The evidence presented by our research teams cannot be ignored. The main display activated, showing detailed biological scans and behavioral analysis of the human crew. Data streams flowed across multiple screens, each one highlighting another impossible aspect of human biology. Dr. Kethvar stood at the presentation podium, his blue scales trembling slightly as he addressed the assembled representatives. The creatures calling themselves humans show clear signs of artificial engineering. Their genetic code contains beneficial mutations that could not have occurred naturally. Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. The ethereal collective's representative, a being of pure energy contained within a crystal matrix, pulsed with worried light patterns. "Are you certain of this analysis, Doctor?" "Absolutely," Kethavar replied. "Look at the evidence. Redundant organ systems that serve no evolutionary purpose. Skeletal structure designed for both flexibility and impact resistance. Immune systems that become stronger through exposure to threats. These are not natural developments." Counselor Fextar of the Mechanical Union spoke through his robotic interface. "The timing is also suspicious. These humans appear just as tensions rise between our major powers. This cannot be coincidence." Meanwhile, aboard the human ship Pioneer, Security Chief Maria Santos was beginning to suspect that something was wrong. The friendly diplomatic meetings had suddenly stopped. Their communications with the Council had been restricted to basic status reports. Most concerning of all, she had detected scanning beams directed at their ship from multiple sources. "Steve," she called to Communications Officer Steve Johnson. "Are you getting anything from the Council channels?" Steve looked up from his console, frustration clear on his face. "Nothing beyond basic acknowledgments. It's like they've cut us off from everything important. And Maria, I'm picking up some really intense scanning activity. They're studying us like we're some kind of threat." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. She had served in 3 colonial conflicts and knew the signs of a military buildup when she saw them. The energy signatures around Harmony Point were changing, becoming more focused, more aggressive. "Get me Commander Morrison," she ordered. "We need to talk." In his quarters, Jake Morrison was reviewing diplomatic protocols when Maria's urgent message came through. The tone in her voice immediately put him on alert. Years of military service had taught him to trust his people's instincts. "What's the situation, Maria?" he asked as she entered his quarters. "Sir, I think we're being classified as hostiles. The scanning patterns, the communication restrictions, the energy buildups around the station. It all points to them preparing for some kind of action against us." Jake frowned, his mind racing through possibilities. "But why? We've been nothing but cooperative. Dr. Barnes has been working with their medical teams, Paul's been sharing engineering insights, Lisa's been helping with their linguistic databases." "Maybe that's the problem," Maria replied quietly. "Maybe we've been too cooperative, too capable." Back in the council chamber, the presentation was reaching its climax. Zizak's drone cluster buzzed with mechanical precision as they delivered their analysis. "The humans demonstrate capabilities that exceed known biological limits," the hive mind stated. "They process information faster than our best scholars. They adapt to new technologies within minutes. They show tactical awareness that operates below conscious thought. Furthermore," Veltar's crystalline form chimed in, "their casual discussions reveal a species designed for warfare. They speak of surviving injuries that would kill most beings. They mention conflicts and combat as normal parts of their existence." The evidence was overwhelming. Video recordings showed Paul Carter improving alien technology with casual ease. Audio files captured Amy Rodriguez describing human immune responses that seemed impossible. Data streams documented Lisa Grant's rapid mastery of languages that took other species years to learn. Historian Peter Kelly, working alone in the ship's archive section, had been researching galactic history when he stumbled upon something that made his blood run cold. Deep in the ancient databases, he found references to a civilization called the Forerunners, a species that had vanished 12,000 years ago under mysterious circumstances. The Forerunners had been master genetic engineers, capable of creating life forms adapted to any environment. More disturbing still, their final records spoke of seed ships and guardian protocols, projects designed to preserve their legacy after their civilization's end. Peter's hands shook as he read the translated text. Project Genesis. Biological. Templates designed for maximum survivability and adaptability. Subjects to be placed in stasis and distributed throughout the galaxy. Activated only when galactic civilization reaches sufficient stability. The timeline matched perfectly. Humanity's emergence into space coincided exactly with the projected activation schedule mentioned in the Forerunner records. "Oh no," Peter whispered. "We're not invaders. We're their creations." In the council chamber, the debate was growing heated. Counselor Thisar had taken the floor again, her golden scales now glowing with aggressive patterns. "The evidence is clear," she declared. "These humans are a biological weapon, created by unknown enemies, and placed among us at this critical moment. They must be contained before their creators reveal their true purpose." "But they seem peaceful," protested harmony singer Meltha of the Gentle Winds Confederation. "They have shared knowledge freely. They have shown no aggressive intentions." "That is exactly what makes them so dangerous," Thisar replied, her tongue flicking out to taste the fear in the chamber's air. "They appear harmless while gathering intelligence about our capabilities. They study our technology while pretending to help improve it. They are the perfect infiltrators." The Thurian representative, War Chief Bruticon, spoke with the voice of a born soldier. "My people have fought wars for 10,000 years. We know weapons when we see them. These humans are living weapons, designed to appear harmless until they strike." High Arbiter Zethmos of the Central Worlds called for order as the chamber erupted in concerned discussions. "The question before us is clear. Do we treat these humans as a potential threat and take preventive action, or do we continue diplomatic relations and risk whatever plan their creators have set in motion?" Commander Morrison was in the middle of an emergency meeting with his senior staff when the first warning came through. Steve Johnson's console lit up with priority signals from multiple sources. "Commander," Steve called out, his voice tight with concern. "I'm getting military movement signatures all around the station. Ships dropping out of hyperspace, weapons systems powering up. Whatever's happening, it's big." Dr. Helen Barnes spoke up from her position at the table. "Could this be related to our medical examinations? Some of the researchers seem disturbed by our biological capabilities." "Disturbed how?" Jake asked. "They kept talking about impossibilities," Helen replied. "Redundant organs, immune system responses, healing rates. Things they said couldn't exist in natural evolution." Paul Carter looked up from his data pad. "Same thing in engineering. They seemed amazed that I could understand their technology so quickly. Kept asking how it was possible." Lisa Grant nodded in agreement. "The linguistics team was fascinated by how fast I could process new languages. They said it usually takes their people years to achieve what I did in days." The pieces were starting to come together. Jake realized that their greatest diplomatic asset, their willingness to demonstrate human capabilities, might have become their greatest liability. "They think we're artificial," he said quietly. "They think someone created us as weapons." Amy Rodriguez, who had been monitoring the medical scans of the crew, looked up with alarm. "Commander, if they believe we're bioengineered weapons, then they're going to see everything we do as a threat. Our strength, our adaptability, our intelligence, it all looks like enemy design to them." Outside the ship, the military buildup continued. Ships from a dozen different species had taken positions around Harmony Point Station. Weapon systems that could destroy entire planets were being brought online. The galaxy was preparing for war against an enemy that didn't know it. Was an enemy, and time was running out for everyone involved. The ancient Forerunner ruins on the dead world of Kepler 438c had been untouched for 12,000 years. Dr. Kevin White, the human missions archaeologist, had requested permission to study the site during their diplomatic mission, never imagining what he would discover in the buried archives beneath the crystalline structures. Kevin's hands trembled as he activated the translation protocols on his portable scanner. The Forerunner text was slowly becoming readable, and each new line sent chills down his spine. Around him, the excavation site buzzed with automated equipment, carefully uncovering artifacts that predated most galactic civilizations. "Computer, translate section 7.4. he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The mechanical voice of his scanner replied with words that would change everything. Genesis Protocol, Final Implementation Phase. Biological templates, designed for survival in any environment, preservation of knowledge and culture, Guardian functions to activate when galactic civilization achieves stability. Kevin sat back on his heels, staring at the ancient text. The Forerunners hadn't created humans as weapons. They had created them as guardians, as preservers of life and knowledge. The timing wasn't suspicious. It was perfect. Humanity had been designed to emerge when the galaxy was ready for them. Meanwhile, on Harmony Point Station, communications specialist Laura Thompson was working frantically to decode the final Forerunner message that Kevin had discovered in the ruins. The message had been compressed into a quantum crystal, its contents protected by encryption that had taken her 3 days to break. "Come on," she muttered, watching as her computers processed the ancient data streams. "Show me what you were really trying to do." The message began to unfold on her screen, and Laura's eyes widened as she read the Forerunner's final words to the galaxy. "To those who find this message, know that we do not abandon you by choice. The great darkness comes, and our time ends. But we have prepared a gift for the future. Scattered throughout the galaxy are our children, not of our blood but of our design. They will wake when the galaxy has healed, when civilizations have grown strong enough to face new challenges." Laura's fingers flew over her keyboard as she continued translating. "We have given them the tools they will need, bodies that can survive in any environment, minds that can adapt to any challenge, hearts that will choose to protect rather than conquer. They are our greatest hope and our final gift to the galaxy." The truth was becoming clear, but outside the station, military ships continued to gather. War Prime Sethek of the Serpentine Collective had taken command of the growing fleet, his massive dreadnought positioned at the center of the formation. "All ships report status," Sethek commanded from his bridge, his serpentine form coiled around the captain's chair. "Weapons. All systems charged and ready, War Prime," his tactical officer replied. "We have enough firepower to reduce their entire home system to space dust." "Good," Sethek hissed. "These humans may be perfect biological weapons, but they bleed like any other creature. We will not let their creators use them against us." Captain Tony Rivera, commanding the small human defense fleet that had been assembled near Earth, watched the alien buildup with growing concern. His 5 ships were outnumbered 50-1, but orders from Earth Command were clear: protect the diplomatic mission and avoid starting a war if possible. "Captain," his tactical officer called out, "we're detecting weapons locks from multiple alien vessels. They're targeting the Pioneer." Tony felt his jaw clench. These aliens were about to attack his people based on fear and misunderstanding. "Signal the fleet. All ships to defensive positions. Do not fire unless fired upon, but be ready for anything." On the Pioneer, Jake Morrison had called his crew together for what might be their final briefing. The tension in the room was thick as his people realized the gravity of their situation. "The situation is clear," Jake said, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "The aliens believe we're biological weapons created by their enemies. They're preparing to attack us and possibly Earth itself." "But we're not weapons," Amy protested. "We're just people trying to make friends with the galaxy." "Try telling them that," Maria Santos replied grimly. "I'm reading over 200 warships out there, all with weapons hot and targeting systems locked on us." Steve Johnson looked up from his communications console. "Commander, I'm getting fragments of Peter's research and Laura's translation. Work. It looks like they've found something important about our origins." Jake felt a spark of hope. "Patch them through." Peter Kelly's voice came through the speakers, excitement and fear battling in his tone. "Commander, we're not what they think we are. The Forerunners created us, but not as weapons. We're meant to be guardians, protectors. The genetic engineering was to help us survive long enough to preserve knowledge and protect other species." Laura's voice joined the transmission. "I've decoded their final message. The Forerunners scattered human colonies throughout the galaxy, in stasis pods programmed to wake up when civilization was stable enough. Earth was just one of many worlds they seeded with humans. The revelation hit the crew like a thunderbolt. They weren't from Earth originally. They were from everywhere, placed by an ancient race to serve as protectors when the galaxy needed them most. How many colonies? Jake asked. According to the records, thousands, Peter replied. Humans should be waking up on worlds throughout the galaxy. We're not invaders, we're the Forerunner's gift to future civilizations. But even as the truth became clear to the human crew, the military situation was deteriorating rapidly. War Prime Sethek had decided that talking time was over. All ships, prepare for coordinated strike, he commanded. Target their vessel and any defensive positions. We will not allow these biological weapons to complete their mission. On his bridge, Captain Rivera watched the alien fleet moving into attack formation. His small defense force was preparing to face impossible odds to protect the diplomatic mission. Captain, his weapons officer reported, the aliens are powering up weapon systems across their entire fleet. They're preparing for a massive bombardment. Signal, all ships, Tony ordered. Defensive screen formation. Protect the Pioneer at all costs. The moment of crisis had arrived. Across the galaxy, automated systems that had been dormant for 12,000 years began to activate. The Forerunners had built safeguards into their Guardian protocol, emergency systems that would trigger if their human children were threatened. On distant worlds, stasis pods that had been hidden beneath the surface began to open. Humans who had been sleeping since before recorded history started to wake up, their genetic programming telling them that somewhere in the galaxy, their people needed help. Dr. Helen Barnes, monitoring her crew's medical readings aboard the Pioneer, noticed something strange happening. Commander, I'm detecting unusual biochemical responses in the crew. Adrenaline levels are spiking, but not from fear. It's something else. Amy Rodriguez felt it too. A strange stirring in her blood, an awareness that seemed to come from outside her own mind. It's like something's waking up inside me. Some kind of instinct I never knew I had. Paul Carter looked up from his engineering console with amazement. The ship's computers are accessing databases I've never seen before. Technical specifications, defensive protocols, tactical information. It's like the ship knows things it was never programmed to know. Lisa Grant was staring at her linguistics station in wonder. I'm understanding languages I've never studied. Alien communication patterns are making sense without translation. It's like I always knew them but just remembered. The truth was becoming undeniable. The approaching battle wasn't just threatening a single human crew. It was threatening the activation of the most sophisticated biological preservation system ever created. The Forerunners had designed their Guardians to respond to existential threats, and that response was beginning to manifest across the galaxy. War Prime Sethek gave the final order that would change everything. All ships commence firing. Destroy the human vessel. As the first alien weapons discharged toward the Pioneer, emergency beacons that had been silent for 12 millennia began broadcasting across the galaxy. The message was simple and clear. The Guardians were under attack, and the galaxy's protectors were awakening to defend themselves and fulfill their ancient purpose. The first alien plasma bolt struck the Pioneer's shields just as something extraordinary began happening across the galaxy. On worlds that had been mapped as lifeless for thousands of years, ancient stasis pods cracked open and released their sleeping occupants into the light of distant stars. Captain Nina Foster opened her eyes for the first time in 12,000 years. The emergency protocols built into her genetic code told her everything she needed to know. Somewhere in the galaxy, her people were under attack. The Guardian network was activating, and she had work to do. Around her on the hidden base beneath the surface of Rigel 7, dozens of other humans were awakening from their long sleep. Each one carried the same genetic programming, the same instinctive knowledge of their purpose. They were not soldiers or weapons. They were guardians, protectors designed to preserve life and knowledge throughout the galaxy. Aboard the Pioneer, Jake Morrison felt the change as it swept through his crew. The approaching alien weapons seemed to move in slow motion as his enhanced reflexes kicked in. Knowledge that had been dormant in his genetic code suddenly became available. Tactical information, defensive strategies, technologies he had never learned, but somehow understood completely. "All crew, defensive positions," he ordered, his voice carrying an authority that came from somewhere deeper than training. "Activate Guardian protocols." "Guardian protocols?" Steve Johnson asked, even as his fingers moved across controls he had never used before. "I don't remember any Guardian protocols." "You do now," Jake replied, watching as his crew's movements became more coordinated, more precise. They were accessing abilities that had been sleeping in their genes, waiting for this moment. Captain Tony Rivera's defense fleet moved with sudden fluid grace as the genetic programming activated in his crews. Ships that had been built for exploration suddenly revealed hidden capabilities. Weapon systems came online that had never appeared in any manual. Defensive technologies activated that Earth's engineers had never designed. "This is impossible," his tactical officer breathed, watching as their 5 ships began coordinating movements with perfect precision. "Our computers are accessing databases that don't exist." "They do exist," Tony replied, understanding flooding through him. "They've always existed. We just forgot how to access them." The alien bombardment struck the human formation with devastating force, but the results were not what War Prime Sethek had expected. The human ships moved like dancers, their formations shifting and flowing to minimize damage. Their defensive systems absorbed impacts that should have destroyed them. "Impossible," Sethek hissed from his command chair. "No 5 ships could survive that bombardment." His tactical officer's voice trembled as he reported, "War Prime, we're detecting additional contacts throughout the sector. Ships dropping out of hyperspace. Dozens of them." Nina Foster's awakened fleet had arrived. The sleeper ships that emerged from hyperspace were unlike anything in the current galactic databases. They were clearly human in design, but built with technologies that seemed to blend the best of every known species. These were the Forerunners' masterwork, vessels designed to preserve and protect, crewed by guardians who had been sleeping since before most current civilizations existed. "This is Captain Nina Foster of the Guardian Fleet," came the transmission, to all ships in the area. "Stand down your weapons immediately. We are here to protect, not to conquer." War Prime Sethek's response was immediate. "You will not deceive us with false words. Attack the new arrivals. Destroy them all." The battle that followed would be remembered throughout galactic history, not for its violence, but for its restraint. The human Guardian fleet fought with precision that seemed impossible, disabling alien weapons without destroying ships, targeting military systems while carefully avoiding crew areas. Nina Foster commanded her fleet with the skill of someone who had fought in the ancient wars that destroyed the Forerunners. Her ships moved through the alien formation like surgeons, cutting away threats while preserving life wherever possible. "Focus fire on their weapons and engines only," she ordered. "These people are afraid, not evil. We show them who we really are through our actions." Meanwhile, engineer Danny Cole and scientist Rebecca Torres had reached the ancient Forerunner beacon that Peter Kelly had discovered in the ruins. The massive installation had been hidden beneath the planet's surface for 12 millennia, waiting for the right moment to activate. "The beacon should broadcast to every inhabited system in the galaxy," Rebecca explained as Danny worked to power up the ancient systems. The Forerunners wanted to make sure their message would be heard when the time came. Danny's hands moved over controls that seemed familiar despite their alien design. The genetic memories inherited from the Forerunners guided his actions as he brought the beacon online. "Powering up now. This should reach every communication system in known space." The beacon activated with a pulse of energy that could be felt across multiple star systems. Ancient Forerunner technology, far more advanced than anything the current galaxy possessed, began broadcasting a message that would change everything. The voice that spoke was unmistakably Forerunner, but the universal translators carried its meaning to every species in the galaxy. "Children of the stars, do not fear our gift to you. The ones you call humans are not weapons but guardians. We created them not to conquer but to preserve. When darkness comes again, they will stand between you and destruction. When knowledge is threatened, they will preserve it. When the weak face the strong, they will protect them." Across the battlefield, alien ships began to slow their attacks as the message continued. The Forerunner voice spoke of hope, of preservation, of a future where all species could thrive together under the protection of guardians who asked for nothing in return but the chance to serve. We give them the strength to survive in any environment, because the galaxy is vast and dangerous. We give them the wisdom to adapt quickly because change comes swiftly to the stars. We give them the courage to fight, because sometimes peace can only be preserved through strength. But most of all, we give them the compassion to choose mercy over vengeance, protection over conquest. War Prime Sethek found himself hesitating as the message reached his command ship. The human fleet had disabled most of his weapons, but they had not targeted his crew quarters or life support. They were fighting to defend themselves, not to destroy their enemies. The final proof came when long-range sensors detected a massive natural disaster developing in the Serpentine home system. A stellar flare was building that would sterilize 3 colony worlds within hours. The Serpentine fleet was too far away to help, and no other ships in the area had the technology to assist. Nina Foster received the distress signals and made the decision that would define humanity's place in the galaxy forever. All ships emergency jump to the Serpentine system. We have colonies to save. Captain, her tactical officer protested. Those are the same people who just tried to kill us. They're people in danger, Nina replied simply. That's all that matters. The human Guardian fleet abandoned the battle and jumped to hyperspace, racing to save the very people who had attacked them. Using Forerunner technology that could stabilize stellar phenomena, they worked tirelessly to protect 3 worlds and 12 billion lives from destruction. War Prime Sethek watched in amazement as human ships positioned themselves between his people's worlds and certain death, their crews working without rest to preserve lives that belonged to their enemies. When the crisis passed and his colonies were safe, he finally understood what the Forerunners had truly created. Stand down all weapons, he ordered his fleet. These are not our enemies. In the aftermath, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session to address the new reality. Humanity was granted full membership with a unique role as guardians and mediators. The species file was updated to reflect their true nature, not bioengineered nightmares, but bioengineered hope for a galaxy that would always need protection. Jake, Morrison stood before the assembled representatives, no longer just a diplomatic commander but a recognized guardian of galactic peace. We ask for nothing but the chance to serve. We offer our strength to protect the weak, our knowledge to preserve culture, and our lives to defend the innocent. This is what we were made for, and this is what we choose to be. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most frightening capabilities can serve the most noble purposes, and that true strength is measured not in the power to destroy, but in the wisdom to protect.